Take care of the elderly. Look after me and my sons as well. My husband and sister said this without a hint of remorse. I was speechless. Despite being married, the two of them had been secretly meeting and going on dates. It seems this accident also occurred while they were on a trip. Shouldn't they be apologizing to me first? After all, it's an affair between my real sister and my husband. It's impossible not to be shocked. However, the two of them seemed to only complain about their own misfortune, without giving any thought to me. It was too much for me to handle. Suddenly, I realized this. If I continued to be involved with them, I would only become unhappy. If that's the case, I had no more doubts. My name is Sally. I'm a 35-year-old homemaker. I used to take pride in my education when I was younger. In fact, the company I worked for was a well-known publishing company. Choosing a publishing company was related to my dream. I had always aspired to be a novelist when I was younger. And when I successfully became in charge of a popular author, I was completely overjoyed. That author was my current husband. I'm going out for research. This was my husband's catchphrase. Apparently, it was essential for pursuing the reality of his new works. Nowadays, most novelists and writers write their pieces based on knowledge and experiences searched on the internet. Among them, my husband was stubbornly old-fashioned. Having handwritten manuscripts is considered a breach of regulations today if an unknown newcomer writes them. In such times, my husband still insisted on the style of a fountain pen and manuscript paper. Before that, your editor is here. Yeah. When I relayed this to him, my husband reluctantly sat back down in his chair. Let them in. The manuscript is finished. Okay. I nodded and led the editor to my husband's study. The editor was still young. Probably just joined the company. My husband is difficult to deal with, so editors change frequently. From the publishing company's perspective, everyone dislikes being chosen, resulting in newcomers being stuck with this task. As expected, the editor who received the manuscript was confused. Can't we convert this to a digital manuscript? This is what I'm comfortable with. Huh. The young editor was like me in the past. My stubborn husband, who does not fit in with the new era, is a rare existence in the industry. However, once he finishes writing a novel, it often becomes a bestseller, showing his talent. Therefore, the publishing company tends to accommodate his whims. Hey! I greeted the editor as they came out of the study. Seeing their exhausted appearance, I offered a wry smile. I've made some coffee, please have some. No, I need to get back to the office quickly. If you say I held you up, it'll be fine. I said this and offered her some coffee. Drinking coffee in the living room and quenching her thirst, the editor said with a puzzled look. Has Sam always been like this since your time? I worked at the same publishing company and was in charge of my husband. Yes. Stubborn and whimsical, an impossible person. I narrowed my eyes with nostalgia. It was about 10 years ago. Digital manuscripts weren't common at that time. So, my husband's insistence wasn't as conspicuous. But that doesn't mean he was the kind of person who would submit his manuscripts quietly. If you point out a typo or missing letter, he'd fly off the handle, and the proofreaders would cry because of his messy handwriting. The editor seemed to wear a knowing smile, as if remembering something. When it came to deadlines, he was always loose, at best finishing on the night of the deadline itself. At worst, he'd miss the deadline and go off the grid, only for me to find him gallivanting around bars. It was during one of these times that he proposed to me. If you were always by my side, maybe I could finally give up my playboy ways. Excuse me? At the time, he was working on a series of romance novels. According to him, to write about the thrills and strategies of love, one must constantly practice them. So, you want to date me to research your romance novels? That's the idea. He said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. When I told this story, the young female editor lit up, clearly intrigued. Did you actually say yes to that? Well, kind of. I could only respond vaguely. Honestly, he wasn't my type, older and a bit chubby. But I thought the idea was interesting. It might be useful for my own writing debut, to draw from my romance with him. So, I started dating him. But it wasn't smooth sailing. He was always late for dates, and his eating habits were erratic. So I frequently visited his place to cook for him. He never really thanked me, but he would earnestly give his critique of the food. "The way you cut the vegetables is too rough. It ruins the flavor. But the stock is good. This soup has a nice aroma and aftertaste." Is that so? At the time, I didn't realize. He was only praising the stock. Not my cooking skills, but the craftsmanship of the person who made the stock. The same went for other dishes. As a young woman, I mistakenly thought he was acknowledging me for selecting good ingredients. I was floating on cloud nine. It wasn't until after we got married that I began to see the truth. "Your sister is coming over today, isn't she?" "Yes. My sister, she's really good at cooking." I boasted as if it were my own accomplishment. To which he responded calmly, "Then buy plenty of ingredients." "Sure. I'll do my best cooking for you and my sister. You just need to buy them." "Excuse me?" My smile faded. But he continued unabated. "You're good at picking ingredients. My sister is good at cooking. It's a nice division of labor, isn't it?" "So, you're saying my cooking is bad?" I asked, my face twisted in a grimace, praying internally that I was just misunderstanding his real intent. "I've told you before." He slowly delivered the words of despair. "You're good at selecting ingredients and managing money. Cooking? Not so much." I trembled at those words. I thought he liked the soup I made. But in reality, he liked the stock I chose and the soup made from it. My skills had been ignored from the start. Trying to hold back tears, I heard a cheerful voice. It was my sister, Camila. "I'm looking forward to your sister's cooking." As I headed to greet her at the entrance, my husband commented. And at dinner, he openly praised my sister's cooking skills. "The seasonal vegetables are full of flavor. The cut size is just right, making it easy to eat. It's a thoughtful dish." "Thank you." My sister was pleased. While I put on a smile, I clenched my fist under the table. "Terrible." The editor grimaced after hearing the story. "You were trying so hard with the cooking, and for him to say that." "That's just the kind of person he is," I replied with a bitter smile, finishing my coffee. Even so. After the editor left, I found myself alone in the living room, reminiscing. From that day on, my husband began comparing me with my sister. "Your sister is beautiful, isn't she? Always properly made up. You seem to always have bed hair, though." "Oh." Embarrassed by his remark, I hung my head. My sister had always been praised for her looks. I had become obsessed with my academic achievements as a way to overcome the inferiority complex from being compared to her. That long-forgotten feeling started to flicker in my mind again with his casual remarks. "I am who I am," I responded as if trying to convince myself more than my husband. He just shrugged. "I'm not impressed with your defiance." "It's not defiance." All I wanted was for him to stop comparing me to my sister. Why can't he understand something so simple? Despite being adept at depicting psychological nuances in his writing, he seems utterly incapable of understanding the person right in front of him. "What's your sister's husband like again?" he asked one day. Here we go again, I thought, but replied anyway. "Just an office worker. Tall and somewhat handsome is all. Doesn't seem particularly skilled at his job." "Huh," was his disinterested response. Yet, surprisingly, he continued. "Maybe I'd be a better match for your sister." "What are you talking about?" I couldn't believe he'd even joke about that. "My sister prefers good-looking men, you know?" "But she said she finds men with social intelligence attractive too," he countered. When did such a conversation even take place? I was horrified. Looking back, it seemed my husband and sister got along unusually well. They shared similar tastes in food and aesthetics, and seemed to find common ground in even the most trivial of topics. "I'm your wife!" I cut off his fantasy sharply. He looked down at the table, visibly disheartened. "That's true," he conceded. This incident made me suspicious of my husband and sister's relationship. It felt absurd to even think about it. Surely, my husband wouldn't be reckless enough to engage in an affair with my sister. Yet, I couldn't shake off a lingering sense of unease. Unfortunately, my fears were eventually confirmed over the years. Now, I find myself tacitly acknowledging my husband and sister's affair. I considered divorce, but then, wouldn't that be exactly what my sister wanted? The thought paralyzed me, leaving me unable to act. "I'm off on a business trip." "Okay. Good luck," felt hollow. Now, his business trips were clearly for my sister. "Where to this time?" "New York." "I see." Extracting just the two of us from his statement, I managed to say, "Have fun." "Yeah." He nodded curtly and left. Alone in the living room, I murmured to myself, "What is he thinking, getting involved with my sister?" No one was there to answer as I aimlessly threw words at the walls. "Wasn't marrying me supposed to end your womanizing ways?" Unable to bear it any longer, I turned on the TV. My eyes widened the moment I did. A breaking news alert was on, announcing that the novelist Sam had been involved in a traffic accident. "No way!" I couldn't believe it. I tried to reach my sister, who should have been with him. But then the phone rang. It was the hospital. "Are you Sam's wife?" "Yes, how is my husband?" "He's in critical condition." They urged me to come immediately, so I rushed to the hospital in a taxi. Upon arrival, the doctor with a grave face delivered shocking news. "Your husband and your sister are both paralyzed. We'll do our best with rehabilitation, but recovery is unlikely." "No!" I broke down in tears. A nurse patted my shoulder, and I felt the weight of sympathetic gazes on me. But what does it all matter now? I didn't need sympathy, I just wanted my husband's health back. And my sister felt the same. What will become of them now? Dragging my heavy feet, I headed for their hospital room. There was a commotion inside. When I entered, my husband was lying in the bed, with my sister in a wheelchair beside him. They were frantically throwing words at each other. "It's because you wanted to go on that long trip. What are we going to do about our lives now? I can't walk anymore either. You're a writer, so it's fine for you. You can work just sitting down." My sister, showing no mercy with her words, couldn't make ends meet on just her brother-in-law's income, as she had been working too, with 2 kids to support. "Sally! You came!" Noticing me, my sister's face lit up. My husband looked at me similarly. This might be the first time I've seen such a friendly expression on their faces. "Sally, look at us, in such a terrible state. If anyone's in a terrible state, it's me." Both of them started complaining about their misfortune at once. Yet, there was no sign of any apology towards me, despite going on an affair trip behind my back. And now they're appealing to me about the terrible situation they're in? I was so appalled I lost my words, and then my husband said, "Take care of us, please. And take care of me and the boys too." At that moment, I understood. These people are hopeless. I shouldn't get involved any further. Then, my course of action is clear. "Hey, where are you going?" My husband's voice showed a hint of panic. My sister tried to stop me in a similar manner. "Come here, let's talk about what to do next." "Excuse me? Why don't you ask his mother?" With that, I turned around. As I was about to leave the hospital room, my sister followed in her wheelchair. "Why bring his mother into this? I can no longer take care of Sam. And if so, it should be Sam's mother's responsibility to take care of him, right?" Stopping, I said that, and Sam raised his voice. "You're not going to take care of me? Are you even my wife? Then, can you, Sam, proudly call yourself my husband?" "Of course, I can." As if he had forgotten about the affair, he said it boldly. That's exactly it. Huh? That's exactly what I can't forgive. My voice turned sharp. Fooling the world, fooling me. And you say it so boldly, I can't stand it. Fooling the world? Yes. My voice trembled as I nodded. I knew something. I had been silent about it until now. But I've reached my limit. You've been out of creative ideas for a long time. But since your name was well known, you published works of unknown writers under your name, didn't you? What are you talking about all of a sudden? That's impossible, right? Sam's voice turned sweet, as if trying to appease me. But that was a futile effort. The novel I wrote 3 years ago and submitted to a Newcomers Award. Officially, it was dropped at the final selection, but in reality, you stole it. What? My husband made a face as if he was the victim of a baseless accusation. How far will he go with his lies? I took a bundle of manuscript papers out of my bag. Do you recognize this story? Recognize it? This is my work, isn't it? My husband said without a hint of guilt. My sister, unable to keep up with the turn of events, blinked in confusion. To make it clear even to my sister, I told her. This manuscript isn't handwritten. That's because you can't use a computer, so you shouldn't be able to write a digital manuscript, right? Despite this, I continued, looking down at the manuscript. This manuscript was written by me on a computer and sent to the publisher as data. Somehow, it ended up printed in your study. I didn't understand what that meant at first. But the mystery was solved. People like me, who had their work stolen by you, started speaking up online. Of course, they were a group of nobodies in the public eye. Their voices were drowned out by the influence you and the publishing company wielded. But that was only until yesterday. Because starting today, I'll be joining their ranks. I can expose the publishing company's wrongdoing because I used to work there. What are you planning to do? His voice was torn between anger and fear. That's right. Before he deceived me with infidelity, he exploited my work as a writer. He probably approached me knowing I aspired to be a writer. And then he monopolized the praise from the world by stealing my work. From now on, you'll be punished for deceiving the public. Think it over, Sally. If you do this, my books will stop selling, our income will be cut off. How will we live as a couple? Even if that happens. I'm not troubled, I replied. Honestly, I no longer have any intention of forgiving him. A life deceived as both a woman and a writer. Now, it's time to take it back. This time, I'll debut as a writer for sure. I'll write a novel about our married life. As if something that convenient could happen. Sally, come back to your senses. My sister also desperately tried to stop me. I just snorted at them. It might be reckless. I'm already middle-aged, perhaps too late to hold on to dreams. But I wanted to give it a shot anyway. Without the interference named husband, I wondered how far my pure abilities could take me. If I end up failing after trying, I'm fine with that. But giving up the path of a writer while being exploited by him was out of the question. If it doesn't work out, I'll find a part-time job or whatever, make money on my own, and live by myself. Sally, that's too cold-hearted. Just because I can't walk anymore, you're going to abandon me and leave? I sighed at his argument. He still doesn't understand. It's not about being paralyzed. It's about what he was doing and with whom he was involved that led to the accident. The lack of apology for that is what I cannot forgive, as I've been saying all along. Well, that's how it is. This time, I really left the two of them behind and left the hospital room. I sensed my sister trying to follow me, but I ignored her and got on the elevator. As the elevator started moving, I thought about the busy times ahead. First, I need to contact the victims group. I have to access the site and find a way to contact the representative. Murmuring, I pulled out my smartphone and started navigating. Eventually, I found the site. It seemed to have moved several times online and was now hidden from external search to avoid detection. The fact that I found the site so quickly must have been fate. The elevator stopped. Let's do this. As I started walking, my thoughts were racing. With the cooperation between me and the victims group, my husband's wrongdoings became news far and wide. I can't believe he was such a terrible person. Outraged people rushed to get rid of his books. Used bookstores piled up with his books, which also made it to the TV news. My husband kept insisting it was all my mad scheme. It's all my wife's plot. She concocted this lie to make herself look sympathetic because she wants to be a writer. He begged people not to be deceived, appearing on shows with a downcast look. Initially, there were people who sided with him, seeing his demeanor. I'm a victim too. When my sister raised her voice like that, it backfired on my husband. I was heading to New York as Sam's assistant. Then this accident happened, and now I'm like this. She attempted to appeal to the public with tears. But her actions were too naive. Why did he go with his wife's sister for research, not his wife? Questions like that bubbled up among people. The seed of distrust grew quickly, and voices questioning the relationship between my sister and my husband became louder. Camila is married too, right? So, it means an affair between two married people. This dangerous relationship tipped the scales. Support for my husband waned, and my sister faced increasing criticism. They were together, at the same place, and now both of them ended up disabled. That's all there is to it, I said in response to the news interviews. My words left things unsaid. This void allows the public to speculate and fill in the blanks, just as dust and debris accumulate in any vacant space in reality. The gaps in the story will be packed with details inconvenient for my husband. Stop it, please. Dragging up my dark history and making a fuss about it. My husband supposedly moaned from his bed. He might have been a great writer at one point. But he had only created works on his own for the first few years, followed by a slump. In a panic, the publishing company began to select the most plausible pieces from public submissions to publish under my husband's name. The impact of this scandal was immense. As a final touch, I visited my now ex-husband. Since our divorce had been finalized by then. You should tell the truth yourself. The truth? Thanks to you and your sister making a fuss, anything I say now gets treated as a lie. But it's the truth, I answered with a wry smile. He had deceived the public on such a grand scale, creating so many victims, yet he continued unabated. Who would believe him now? You, who built your social status and wealth on lies, must return everything to the victims. No, I refuse. He curled up in fear on the bed, unable to move well, causing the blanket to slip to the floor. No one was there to pick it up for him. Given that his mother, my mother-in-law, was focused on self-preservation, doing the bare minimum for him and keeping her distance. Even now, she should be able to hear her son's moans from the next room. But there was no sign of her coming to help. No! I'm a writer. A genius who effortlessly won countless awards. If you were truly a genius, I sighed, you wouldn't have lost your talent, or you would have retired gracefully once you sensed its decline. But if I did that, my income would stop. He screamed, almost like a wail. But where was I supposed to find sympathy in his argument? I couldn't understand. I shrugged and continued. A genius writer would regularly sell books and earn royalties. Otherwise, you could just work. If I face the public, I'll be ridiculed again, suffer terribly, he said with dark eyes. Apparently, he was ridiculed by classmates in his student days for being unremarkable, which is why he clung to the status of a writer. Now, with his body disabled, his future income would likely be limited to royalties and disability benefits. Yeah, but even those royalties won't come in if the books aren't proven to be your works, I remarked nonchalantly. Despair filled his eyes. His life was at a deadlock. Confirming this, I left his house. Goodbye, Sam, I murmured, surprisingly feeling refreshed. I'll never step foot in this house again. There's no reason for me to keep being sincere to someone who can't even admit their mistakes and apologize. My sister has also suffered social damage. The real tragedy is her family. Just because they are her family, her husband and sons were subjected to curious stares. I'm planning to divorce her. That's probably for the best. I nodded during the call. It's not my sister's husband's fault, and the sons are just pitiable. I couldn't let them be burdened with my sister any longer. I went to their house to see them off as they were leaving. Just as I thought I saw the entrance, the door opened, and someone burst out. Wait! Please, don't leave me! It was my sister, showing up with a pained voice. Somehow maneuvering her wheelchair, chasing after her family. Hey, don't ignore me, hey! If we stay with you, even the boys and I become laughingstocks. It's not a joke, her husband said dismissively, shaking off her clinging hands. Then noticing me, her husband said, I apologize for the trouble my wife has caused you. No, she's my sister too. I replied, feeling ashamed for ever thinking of him as someone without substance beyond his looks. At least, unlike my ex-husband, he had the decency to apologize when he felt he was in the wrong. Hey! Meanwhile, my sister directed a furious shout and glare my way. You've wrecked someone's life and still have the face to show up? And you, having an affair with someone's husband and still playing the victim? I retorted, dismayed. My sister was always like this. Spoiled by everyone around her since childhood, she has a character incapable of admitting her own failures. After all, it was you who went on a trip with my husband of your own accord and ended up in an accident. How is it my fault? It's what happened after that's the issue. Because you exposed Sam, I got scrutinized and ended up like this. She said, beginning to cry. Just by her expressions, indeed I would seem the villain and she the tragic heroine. Especially since she was in a wheelchair, enough to evoke anyone's sympathy. But then, a sharp voice cut through. Enough already. You! Wounded, my sister turned to look at her husband, who was furious. The sons too looked at their mother with eyes full of blame. Mom, just stop it! Why? Every time you say something, we lose our place. Isn't it because you did something wrong? That's... Unable to counter her own son's words, her husband said, just admit it, you've done something irrevocable, and it's all come to light. He's right. I continued his words. All you can do, sister, is stay silent. The more you speak, the more you disadvantage yourself, and your family suffers. Lies! If I stay quiet, I'll be slandered even more! She screamed. Silent or not, there's no escape for you. I shouted too. How can you not understand that? I barked, filled with anger. It's over. All you can do is bear your sins alone. Don't drag your family into this. What am I supposed to do if everyone leaves me? Such selfishness from my sister. Her husband and children all looked heavenward in exasperation. We can't take care of Mom anymore, we're at our limit. No. Don't leave me. My sister finally broke down in tears. The commotion was so loud that neighbors began to peek out. We'll end it here, please don't mind us. And with that, everyone, including my sister's husband and sons, dispersed, leaving her behind. Afterward, my sister persistently called me. When I answered just once, the voice of my half-frantic sister came through. I didn't have an affair. I really just went as Sam's assistant. But nobody believes me, nobody will even speak to me. I bet. I immediately ended the call. Since then, I've ignored calls from my sister. What does it feel like to cling to lies that have already been seen through? My ex-husband is apparently being cared for by his mother, but it's just the bare minimum, he said, lacking familial affection. All I have around me are heartless people. Birds of a feather flock together, don't they? With that, I also stopped responding to calls from my ex-husband. Both are searching for someone to lament their own misfortunes to. Finding such convenient people is unlikely, though. The sympathy directed towards me was significant. Yet, I plan to pause my writing activities until that noise subsides. Why not rewrite the novel Sam stole with your own hands? There were such offers. For a moment, I considered it. But when I calmed down, I thought to myself, I'll think about it once the public forgets this incident and I become anonymous again. Why? Being famous now seems like an opportunity, the editor said. Indeed, I think so. Writing a novel now, I could surely make my debut as a writer. But that's not what I wish for. I want to compete on my own merit, not temporary fame or sympathy. How noble of you. I thought you were more pragmatic. The editor seemed disappointed as he left. That's fine. I genuinely desire to try my best on my own merit. How far can I go? For now, I'll just work on the plot. And someday, I'll give it form. My own story.